Right, so I'll drag across my review, and where's the Cochrane webinar? Here's my webinar. Is my EPPI Reviewer screen showing now?
Yes, we can see that.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks. Right, so this is the EPPI Reviewer screen. I've just set this up just before the session for this session. So this is just an example review. I've got, at the moment, I've got 1,200 citations, which I just imported from PubMed. I can show you them just quickly. Where are they? Just here. I've managed my sources. I did a not very systematic search. I did a search on yoga and mental health, and I did a search on smoking cessation and alcohol, just so I've got some rather diverse citations sitting there in the background. I then screened some of them manually, so I did that early part of the screening process, and I've got 6 includes and I've got 8 excludes. So that was just so that I had some data to work on. And I won't take you through all of the options for setting up machine learning and that kind of thing in the user interface, but it's a fairly straightforward process in that what needs doing is creating a list of items to screen. What that does is it builds the machine learning model, which I mentioned, and ranks all of the citations. So I did that just before we started. So I can now click the begin screening button. And I'll turn on the terms as well here. What I've done is I've set up my highlights so that yoga is highlighted green, and I can see on the left here, and cigarettes currently is going to be highlighted as irrelevant. So cigarettes, anything to do with smoking, is going to be highlighted in red, just so that I can screen through these quite quickly. I'm going to turn on auto advance, and I'm going to turn on the hotkeys function, which means that I can operate my screening include exclude using Control Shift 1 and 2, which means I don't have to use the mouse. So if we're worried about RSI, that's quite helpful if you've got thousands of these things to get through. One of the things that some of the people at the office actually do is use the sort of voice activation software. So they actually set this up so that they don't have to touch the keyboard at all when they're doing their screening. They just say type 1 and 2, etc., and the computer fills in the includes and excludes for them. So this one's about yoga, so I'm going to call this one an include, which is a 2. This one's also about yoga. This one's also about yoga. This one's also about yoga. So this, I think the problem I've got here is that the machine has learnt already too well how to distinguish relevance from irrelevance. So, and we're not going to see anything on, is this yoga? Yeah, this is yoga as well. What I was hoping to see was something on smoking in this list, at least. But I built the model, and it's, well, as you can see, it's actually being able to distinguish with 100% certainty at the moment the fact that what I'm interested in is studies on yoga rather than studies on smoking. But what you can also see is at the top left here, I'm now at item 20 in the current list. When I get to around item 25, it will go and rebuild its model. But as I say, I think, there we go. Oh, look at this, is interesting. We've got one here, which is around the benefits of yoga, but also is about smoking cessation. So it's slightly further down the list than the first lot were, because I guess it's got both those terms. I'm going to exclude that one just so that it's got something in the exclude list. But you can see now we're up to item 27, as I've been clicking very quickly. So what's happening in behind the scenes is that list is now being recreated, and then at some point it will come back with the completed, with a new list for me. But at the moment it's being much too successful in terms of being able to distinguish between relevance and irrelevance. It knows that everything to do with yoga I'm interested in. So you're not going to see very many irrelevant citations here. Okay. Are there any questions on this?
James? Yeah, we've got a question from Laurel, a couple of questions actually. So she's asking, can you do proximity searching, and also can you add a screen or a filter for randomized controlled trials?
Proximity searching, I think you can on the search screen, not in this bit of the software. But I think there's syntax for searching for near. I'd need to look it up, I'm afraid, what exactly the syntax is. But yeah, on the search screen, which I'll show you here, which is over here, I think that you can, if we look at do a text search here, we can use wildcards and that kind of thing. And I think there's a syntax for proximity, but I'm afraid off the top of my head, I don't know what it is. I'll have to check. Sorry, what was the other one? Oh, the RCT. Oh, well, that's a good question. And I don't know whether you've heard about the RCT classifier that we've been building. I actually did have a slide on that. It's something we're using already. What I've done is I've built a classifier, which is a machine learning model, which is able to distinguish between RCTs and non-RCTs based on their citation details. So usually the title in the abstract. I'm not using the mesh terms at the moment because, for a start, adding them in doesn't seem to improve the model much anyway, and also because you can't depend on everything having the same having mesh terms for a start, or even if it's got some kind of terms coming from the same vocabulary. So at the moment we're not using that. But you can see this is the ROC curve from the classifier here. The area under the curve is 0.984, and it's based on 150,000 screening decisions from the Embase project, where led by Anna Nelstor. So there's a lot of data which we've been able to use to build a model with a high degree of precision and recall that can distinguish between RCTs and non-RCTs. And then on the right here, we've got results of applying that classifier. So you can, and what we've got along the x-axis is the probability that something is an RCT. Then we've got the frequency, the number of citations in that data set. So this was just a standard search across Embase for a month. And you can see that it's very confident that there are a small number of RCTs on the right here. There are a few that it's less confident about one way or the other, though these are likely to be RCTs at the top right here, and these are likely to be non-RCTs. And then there's the vast majority of these which it's very confident and not RCTs. And on the whole, for both ends of this this distribution, it tends to be right in that if it thinks it's an RCT, it almost always is, and if it thinks it isn't, it's right, it's not an RCT. And sometimes in the middle here, it's because it's a little bit unclear from the abstract. Actually, anybody reading it is not completely clear whether or not it's an RCT because the information is a little bit ambiguous. So yes, there is an RCT classifier, and it will be coming very soon actually, because it's something that a number of people are asking for. So obviously that's another way of reducing citation screening. If you want to trust the machine, like I say, even if you just want to use the high degree of confidence that something isn't an RCT for a lot of reviews, just knocking out all of the non-RCTs will actually reduce workload in citation screening quite a lot. So yes, the RCT classifier is coming. We're using it already in the Embase screening, and yeah, it'll be something which we can apply in here very soon as well.
James, another question from Nathan here. So he's asking about text mining and the sort of process of that. He's saying even with text mining, does one still manually scroll through all of the citations?
I think that's going to be a question for reviews, and it'll vary according to different reviews. If I go back to this chart here, you can see for a lot of these reviews, and especially for the more technical reviews, the Classifier, the text mining works very, very well, and really you can regard an awful lot of the screening being done here as being a waste of time, in that we know that if we use this technology, we found them all. I think it's something that we're going to need to have some conversations about across Cochrane in terms of how and when we should be using this technology. I think that I think that we're wasting an awful lot of resource looking at citations which we don't need to look at. And so if we're combining something of this active learning potentially with using the RCT classifier, we can focus our energies on the more interesting bits of the review. So I think that there's also a question that methods groups are going to have to consider quite carefully as well, because I know there's at least one Cochrane review which is using machine learning to literally eliminate citations automatically, but I don't think that it's something which has yet got cross collaboration agreement on exactly how we should do it yet. I think that it would be irresponsible if we didn't fairly soon, because we're just wasting resource at the moment. But we obviously have to do it in a methodologically robust way.
Thanks, James. That's it for questions for the moment.
Okay, great. All right. Well, that's citation screening. I'm not sure there's all that much to say or show really, because it kind of does its thing. While we've been talking, I've just gone back to the citation screen here, and you can see it's gone back to item 1 in the current list. So that means it went away, rebuilt its model, then re-ranked all of the citations that I haven't yet screened, and I'm then now presented with item number 1 in the current list. And as you'd expect, yoga is going to be at the top of the list. And yeah, the machine learning, when it's got a nice lot of data like that to work off, does perform reasonably well. Yeah, and then it gives you a graph as you go. So as we go around that iteration, we can start to see a graph emerge, which for this review with working how I'm working at the moment will look a little bit like this middle one here, with everything being found very early, and then all of the irrelevant citations pushed towards the end of the list.